Good afternoon and welcome to the session. I'm Aug20Wed, a professor in Mathematics Education Department from Seoul National University, Korea. I'll be chair for this session. Since we have two invited speakers for 90 minutes, each speaker will have 40 minutes for talk and 5 minutes for discussion. Now I'd like to introduce the first speaker, Dr. Etienne Ghys. He is Director of Research at National Center for Scientific Research and member of Academy of Science in France. He was plenary speaker in ICM2014 and ICM2014 Seoul. And he's making fascinating mathematical films. His film, Dimensions and Chaos, are quite widely spread. And the title of his lecture is The Internet and Popularization of Mathematics. Please welcome him.
Thank you very much. So what you don't know is that you practiced a lot in order to pronounce my first name correctly. And I want to congratulate her. Thank you. So this talk will not be about mathematics. It will not be a popular talk either. I want to share with my fellow mathematicians some of my feelings about personal experiences on popularization. Let me begin nevertheless by definition. Let me begin by definition. Thank you. So for today, I will define popularization of mathematics as being the attempt to share some of the current mathematical research to the general public. In ICM 2006, IL18.1 analyzed in great detail all the media which can be used for popularization. But he barely mentioned the internet. 8 years later, the internet changed our lives. And I have a feeling that it should be the main mathematical popularization tool. It is our duty as mathematicians to learn this new communication tool, its rules, and to adapt it to our community. This is the main subject of this talk. There is a need for popularization. In this ICM, speakers don't have to justify why they discuss deductive groups over local fields. But more speakers on popularization have to explain why they are doing that and why this is a respectable mathematical activity. My first comment would be to say that it helps you understanding your own mathematics. In 1978 or so, Sir Christopher Zeeman gave a Christmas lecture on television. He was criticized by the head of the British Research Council because he was wasting his time on television. He answered that this television show was the source of a paper on dynamical systems. Another example I want to quote is a very famous quote by Hilbert in this famous talk that he gave in Paris in 1900. A mathematical theory is not to be considered complete until you made it so clear that you can explain it to the man, I should have said the man or the woman, in the streets. For what is clear and easily comprehended attracts and the complicated repels us. Like this quote very much. The second motivation is it's very rewarding. A typical mathematical research paper has how many readers? 10, 12, 20 if your paper is good. A good popularization paper can be read by hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands of readers. And for our own ego, it's very rewarding. The next is, of course, the obvious reason. We are facing a significant decrease in the number of math students, or more generally scientific students, and we have to do something. Not only for the future of mathematics, but the future of science, for the future of society, for many reasons that it's useless that I discuss now. One point I want to stress is that in many cases, in popularization, it is not necessary to discuss too much mathematics. Sometimes it's impossible to say nothing about mathematics, besides the fact that mathematicians exist. This is a fundamental issue. Most of our fellow citizens, they don't even know that our profession exists, and this is respectable activity. So, in many cases, your job is only to hope that you exist. Maybe in a more serious way, you could say that taxpayers want to understand what we are doing with their money. Of course, one should not forget the cultural aspects. We should convince the population that mathematics is fun and interesting for everybody in the same way as literature can be enjoyed at many levels, not only academic levels. And the final point I wanted to stress is that, of course, it's a political and democratic issue of choosing popularization or not. I want to give one example. In 1841, the French astronomer François Arago was the director of the observatory in Paris. He decided to construct a huge lecture hall right in the middle of the observatory, only for one purpose: his weekly popular lectures on astronomy. His successor, Urbain Le Verrier, his first act was to destroy the amphitheater and to transform it in his own apartment. Two great scientists and two different views. Internet. Let me focus today on internet. Of course, mathematics is already very present on the internet. Of course, many websites, I just mentioned Tao's blogs, for example, but this is not popularization. It's a blog, it's a website for professionals. Math teachers have many websites, but again, this is not popularization in my definition. They are not related to current research. Wikipedia is something fantastic, including in mathematics, but I would not qualify that as popularization. But nevertheless, there are many websites on popularization with my definition of today. I mentioned here some of them, but not as many as we would like. Let me give you a few characteristic features of the internet. First feature, this is a jungle. You find on the internet the best and the worst. The first mistake that we should avoid would be to try to export our professional habits to produce web pages that would be all identical. We have to accept the reality of this jungle. The second point is that on the internet, unlike most of our papers, most of our books, the information is not organized linearly. You know, I come from a country, Bourbaki style, when everything goes from A to Z. Internet is not like that. We know in mathematics today that the graph is richer than the set of its vertices. Information today is organized in networks. We have to take that into account, and we have to realize that we should not produce websites or web information in a linear ordered system. We should realize that web users are hopping from page to page. You know, there is a number called the bounce rate. The bounce rate is the probability that the web user just jumps from immediately after clicking a page to somewhere else. And a typical bounce rate is 1/2. 1/2 of the web pages are not read. People just hop somewhere else. For me, it may be the most important paradigmatic shift. Information used to be organized linearly in our mathematical minds, in our mathematical ideas, and it's now organized in networks. We should study and understand much better this new way of reading and understanding, which is much closer to a random walk than to a motionless scholar in a library. The related aspect of the internet is, of course, high speed. We are used to write slowly. We spend months and months, years sometimes, writing papers. Web users put quickly on the Facebook wall sentences that make no sense. We have to accept it. We have to understand that this is the way things are working. We have to accept it and use it. Another important question related to the internet is the validation problem. As I told you, you find on the internet everything, the best and the worst, and web users want some kind of validation. We have to choose between basically two options, and we have to be creative. One option would be to export our ideas from refereeing system, producing validated websites by some experts. Another option would be to believe in the wisdom of the crowd, like in a Wikipedia system. Ask for something which would be validated automatically, so to speak. We have to be creative on this subject, and so far we did not make any progress as far as I know. The next point with the internet is wild plagiarism. It is amazing to see how quickly the text on the internet can travel from website to website, modified, changed, cut into pieces, etc., etc. I think we should acknowledge the fact that this is an honor for us to be plagiarized. This would be, how do you say, a rear guard battle. Plagiarism is the law of the internet. We have to take that into consideration. This is very different from our usual way of thinking in mathematics. We hate plagiarism in mathematics. On the internet, we should love it. If somebody copies you, congratulate. This qualifies for internet, but also for the books, the articles, whatever. Okay, so all these apparent drawbacks, we should see them as positive and powerful new opportunities for us. We should not export our tradition, we should import the tradition of internet. Okay, so that was kind of introduction, and I want to construct my talk around three very personal examples. I want to describe three attempts of communicating via internet. I want to describe what I did, and I want to assess it, say what was successful and what was less successful. So let me begin by my first attempt on the internet. It was mentioned by the chairwoman, these two films I produced. So let me explain the story what happened to me. In 2006, I was preparing a general audience talk, and I was needing some pictures, and I found beautiful pictures on the net. So I asked it for permission to the webmaster. He gave me the pictures, I used them, I gave my talk, and after the talk I sent an email to this guy saying, "Who are you?" And he answered that he's an engineer, a chemical engineer who retired recently, and he told me, "I retired recently, so at last I can do mathematics." So I was so happy to meet an engineer. You know, this first time in my life I could see an engineer. I was really happy to collaborate with non-mathematicians, and I can tell you it was a great opportunity for me. So at the time I was preparing a talk for the ICM 2006, and I had a theorem I wanted to present, which in my mind was very like a picture. So I asked the guy to help me producing pictures. We produced not only pictures but movies. And when I gave my talk in Madrid, a good part of the talk was actually movies. So I was happy with that. And I sent an email to my friend. And he answered immediately, "Now you have to explain to me." Because we had produced images and movies, beautiful movies, about modular forms, blocks, etc., etc. But he did not understand the content of his own movies. So he asked me, I was facing the challenge of his birth. I had to explain to the man in the street. So we decided to explain everything from scratch. And we had the idea of producing a film, starting at zero and going to the modular forms. Of course, it was not very realistic. Nevertheless, we produced the first film called Dimension, that I'm going to describe to you shortly. And of course, it was just a first step towards the modular forms, and then we produced the second one. I will explain that to you. And for me, it was a fantastic experience, trying to explain to an engineer. I can tell you he's very clever, but he knows nothing about mathematics. It was like a real challenge for me, and now he knows modular form, and I know how to produce pictures. So let me tell you something about this film. Each film, we have two films, is decomposed into 9 chapters, each being 30 minutes long. We did our best to tell a story. So each chapter is very well centered around the mathematician. And the fantastic part of this experience was that this is International Congress. I have many colleagues and friends all around the world. They helped me translating the film in many languages. So the film is translated in 20 languages, and we have 8 soundtracks. And the most important thing is the last, it's free. I think it's something very important. When we finished the first film, I went to a private publisher, and I asked him, how should I distribute it? And this guy, I will not mention the publisher company, told me there is no market for it. 2 years later, I show you, we have 2 million downloads. This question of price and copyright and Creative Commons, I think it's very important. I think popularization of mathematics should be free. We should stop selling books. We should stop selling objects. It should be free, like music. This is another story. Okay, so we produced a second film on dynamical systems. It starts from very elementary things about motions, velocity, accelerations, and it goes, the last chapter is about current conjectures in dynamical systems, actually related to Hardy's contribution. So let me try now to give you some comments about the assessment of these two fields. First, it's very difficult for me to measure in a quantitative way how many people saw it. But the only thing I can tell you is that we had more than 2 million unique visitors from all countries in the world. All means, thank you, Google Analytics. But I have no control. I told you, it was plagiarized. It is on YouTube, on Dailymotion. Many people are cutting into pieces and projecting in some places, and I have no control on this subject. It's not under my control anymore. I'm very happy. The second point is maybe not so positive. We received literally thousands of emails thanking us. I can tell you that this is the first time in my life I received an email from a kid in the middle of China thanking me for introducing him to the fourth dimension. It never happened to me that I received emails from people seeing some kind of relation between mathematics and philosophy or religion, whatever. So it's very difficult for me to understand who really looked at this film. But the non-positive fact is that I believe that we only reached those who had already some interest for mathematics. I didn't realize that when we started the film. There are two kinds of possible publics. One could be those who want mathematics, they are looking for it, and they find it. And those who don't want mathematics, and I want to reach them. That's a different target, that's a different objective. The second public is maybe more important. And this second public, I think we did not reach it. Creative Commons, as I told you, was not only a good choice, but I think the only possible choice. Now, also for the non-positive point of view, of course, we produced this film, my friend, myself, plus, I should say, a graduate student who joined the team, but 3 people. The 3 people produced 4 hours of cinema. Of course, we are amateurs. This movie has nothing to do with Hollywood. It's an important question of knowing if I had asked it for money, maybe I should have gotten grants, for example, from, I don't know if I can say that, Christophe, but I asked it CNRS. I asked it CNRS, would you help me? Not you, CNRS Media. I asked it CNRS, would you help me? And the answer was, there is no relation between mathematics and pictures. So the logo of CNRS is not. No. Sorry. So it's unclear to me if the result would have been better or not if we had involved money, people, hiring people. For me, the most important part of this adventure is that it was just fun. And I think the little kid from China doesn't care about Hollywood. I was happy to discover that this idea of splitting the film into small chapters was really a good idea. What is not as good is that we should have produced something more interactive. So the next film will not be a film, but will be a video game. We need interactivity. We need to use the power of the internet, which is interactivity. The reader is not a reader, it's an actor. So this is the next goal, but this will be harder to produce a mathematical video game. And finally, I wanted to mention that, of course, the 2 films are related to geometry and dynamics, which are obviously easier to popularize than, let's say, arithmetic geometry or whatever. It's a very important question of knowing if all parts of mathematics can be popularized. I think the answer is no. But you know, physicists or astronomers have the same problem. Not everything in astronomy can be popularized. Nevertheless, a significant part of astronomy can be popularized, and this is somehow enough. So I think it is not a tragedy if a good part of mathematics is not popularizable. It's good news that a good part of it could be popular. Okay, let me now speak of my second experience with internet. It's a website called ICM2014, which began, so to speak, in 1980, when CNRS, in this case was a good position, decided to produce a journal presenting mathematical results to the general audience. Of course, it was a paper journal, which was appearing once every 2 years, containing 10 or 15 articles. CNRS produced a few of them. It was very expensive. They printed 7,000 copies, and I could check that most of these copies were directly sent to the garbage. So I said to myself, we should do something better and cheaper and wider. And then in 2006, I decided to begin a website which in my mind should be something like a daily newspaper on mathematics. It's called Images de Mathématiques, and we do our best to have a production of articles, and I'm going to say a few words in a moment. Basically, my dream would be to have something new every day. 5 years later, we have published 2,000 articles. So let me explain a little bit how this website functions. Before we look at my time. Good. So this newspaper, this journal, publishes two kinds of things. One of the two is called article. We have here an example. In most articles, the idea is to connect with research. These articles are refereed in a very unique way. So let me explain that. We have a pool of about, I think, 500 volunteers who agree to read papers before publications. So each time a paper is submitted, we select about 10 of these referees. One half of them being mathematicians, and the other half being the men or the women on the street. And these 10 people, plus the author, plus the editor, have an access to a private page, and they just discuss the quality of the article. The idea is not to reject papers. You know, I spent my life in editorial boards. I got bored of rejecting them. This is really a tragedy. So the point is to accept it. But we take the time which is necessary to improve it until it is good. And so these 10 people plus these 12 people discuss, and it's an open referee system. And we also publish columns. The column is not refereed, it's just an opinion of one of our columnists. You can see here one of the last columns by François Sauvageau on women, mathematics, and physics. I told you we published so far 1,000 articles and 1,000 columns. Let me tell you some things about the assessment of this Images de Mathématiques. The first is that we have about 4,000 unique visitors a day, which is 4 times more than we had 4 years ago. Is good, not as good as I wanted. It's improving. Of course, since it's in French, the potential public is not so big, but nevertheless, I would like more. But the question is, who is reading this? A standard criticism against Images de Mathématiques is that readers are our colleagues, which is not supposed to be the case. We did some kind of survey, And indeed, among these visitors, about 1/3 of them are colleagues, but 2/3 are not. What we are really missing is the young people. Young people do not read our papers because they are too difficult, too long, and too difficult. The main difficulty, I'm sorry to say that, but we discovered that among the readers, 80% are male. I don't understand. The main difficulty with the Mathématiques is to find authors. Why? All our colleagues are under publication pressure. They don't want to waste their time writing this kind of paper. Because this kind of paper is not usually included in their curriculum. One way to solve that would be to obtain, for example, the possibility that mathematical review could review them and can guarantee, from my own experience, that the refereeing system in Mathématiques is much harder than in many famous journals. However, no answer from mathematical review. They don't care. Answer from central bank. Nothing from mathematical review. I think it's a main question. If we want to improve popularization, we have to thank these authors publishing papers. We have to make things in such a way that it is valuable for their career to write papers in mathematics. Maybe not as much as the paper in Annals of Math. But I can tell you, myself, I wrote many papers in this journal, that writing a paper for anatomy mathematics is a hard work. It's not easy. It deserves publicity, recognition. As I told you, the other problem is that I'm not able, I do my best, but it's very difficult to convince our colleagues that their papers are impossible to understand. We are all convinced that we are doing trivial things. And it's amazing. It's really amazing how blind we are. This refereeing system is rather efficient, and the editors like myself are tough. But we have difficulties finding authors writing elementary mathematics. Another problem, I don't know this problem, that by definition authors in mathematics are mathematicians. They are not journalists. Is it a good option or not? Many other institutions have made some different choices. The Simons Foundation, for example, has this journal Quanta, and they have decided something else. They have journalists writing papers. A good paper. Was it the right choice or not? I don't know. From my point of view, it's good also because Imagine Mathematics can be also thought as a laboratory to teach our colleagues how to write, understandable. And again, I want to emphasize the fact that the refereeing system, I believe, it is semi-anonymous, it's semi-open. I think it's a good system. Again, the main difficulty is that we do not reach very young people. That's okay, let me go to the third personal experience. Again, this is very, very personal. Third personal experience is about popular lectures on the web. The idea of popular lectures is not new. For instance, in 1825, Faraday launched the Royal Christmas Lectures aimed at a juvenile auditor. Since 1967, they are broadcast on television. But the first Christmas lecture was in mathematics, was in 1978, that Christopher Zeman mentioned earlier, and we have to wait until 2006 for another one by Marcus du Sauton. This is really a mathematical show. This is really fantastic. You should have a look at this website, have a look at the difference between Zeeman and Dussertol. It's really interesting to see how things are moving. Okay, you can see here Professor Zeeman explaining, I don't know. It has become fashionable today to include popular lectures in meetings, like for example the ICM. And for me, the main drawback is that people never think about the audience. If you organize a popular talk in the ICM, you should expect mathematicians. You should not pretend you are in front of teenagers. And the main difficulty for me also is that it has become popular to film these lectures and put them on the web. Usually it's a disaster. It seems to me that when you produce a film, a popular lecture on the web, you have to think of the web before you think of the audience. You have to prepare the talk for the web and not for the audience. You have to prepare an object which is thought as a web object, not as retransmission of events. I gave a talk in Play lecture in Paris a few years ago. I was very happy with this talk. Teenagers, full of teenagers. The first row was essentially filled with this. No joke. Seven and on the other rows we had teenagers. It was a good talk. It was very well filmed, but it's a one-hour talk. It was not aimed at internet. And as an internet object is not a good object. It's too long. Nobody looks at 1 hour on television, on the web. It should be much shorter. And I wanted to finish with one example that I practiced recently. Yes, it's called Les Ernest. It's an association of young students from École Normale Supérieure. They organize filmed lectures, 15 minutes long. And the idea is that this is produced not for people, it's produced for the internet. The idea is that you have a public in front of you, but it's just to have like somebody in front of you. They have many cameras, they work a lot on the editing of the film, and they produce something 15 minutes long. Of course, for the speaker, you have to prepare. But I can tell you, have a look at this website. It's really containing a lot of good talks of 15 minutes. Now, mathematics in this, I gave the first. We have to work in that direction. We have to prepare talks 15 minutes long, maybe even shorter, but produced for the web. So let me give some conclusions quickly. One, the internet is probably the most powerful and efficient tool for popularization in mathematics. Two, we have to learn the language which is adapted to this medium. And when I say to learn, we have to adapt to the media. We do not have to export our ideas. We have to train the younger generations of mathematicians in these techniques. And this implies that popularization has to be evaluated in a rigorous way, just as research papers are evaluated. We have to invent techniques for evaluating popularization in a serious way. And we have to make things in such a way that a younger student producing popularization should be proud of it, just like we are proud of publishing it. Thank you very much.
Now we have time for a couple of questions. Any hands?
I have a question. In your definition of popularization, you talk about sharing mathematics with the public.
Yes.
And you give a number of wonderful examples where you and others have tried to present mathematics to the public. Except for the emails and the surveys, I don't hear any examples of the public giving mathematics to
Yeah,
you.
that-
You
that-
address that anywhere elsewhere.
Maybe I was not clear. I presented 3 personal experiences. I did not say it was a success. I wish I could share. I told you honestly, I mean, I did 3 things,
Yeah.
did better.
I
I do agree with you that it could be, it should be shared more.
Do you have any ideas about how the public can share back?
There are many possibilities of interaction when you interact with it.
Right, do you have a favorite?
No, you should have. I mean, I'm not coming here with solutions. I'm just
Okay.
asking questions, and opening questions, and you are asking a very good question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So this question of whether to pay for the material to make it free
Yeah.
seems to me more complicated maybe than you present it. So I have a colleague in Toronto who's developed very nice material for high school students.
I think I will.
He's made it freely available.
Yeah.
All of the high school boards in our province have consultants who work for publishers that tell them what materials to use. There is not a single board in our province that uses this material. It's used in England, it's used in California, it's used in
So how do you
British Columbia.
understand that?
Yeah, so it's a problem. One of the things I understand is that if people don't pay for something, they don't value it.
Maybe in Canada.
And I also I also understand that you're in a situation right now where you're not competing with anyone.
I agree with
But when you're competing with established commercial interests, it gets very complicated because the publishers have a fleet of people who are pushing their own.
I'm just
But do you have any ideas about how to address this problem?
I wanted to ask the question.
Yeah.
You know, I hate people making money out of that.
Okay,
Okay.
I want to continue in the line that we say, I want to continue for one more sentence on the line of the free. Doing it free is because you are paid by
Yes,
someone
sure,
else,
sure,
so it's
sure.
not totally free.
Sure, I should thank Christophe for Actually, I think my salary that I receive every month from Christophe, I'm supposed to work 35 hours a week. I can promise I did more. And I did that in my free time. No, that's a good point. You're of course
There are
right.
not many people.
No, you are fully right. I mean, maybe that's my last conclusion. The community should invest people and money for producing free objects.
And if, as you say, it will be considered as a criterion for promotion,
Sure.
then it is sort
It is
of
part
paid.
of your job.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, I agree with that. Sorry, I was too simplistic.
Okay. On behalf of local organizing committee, we prepared a small clip to show our appreciation.